When you're young and own a business, people are curious, and they ask you a lot of questions. The most common one I hear is, "You started your company when you were 22? I couldn't even tie my shoes when I was 22." Think about that. As a grown-up, why would you ever say that about your younger self? When you're 22, you're an adult. You've spent the last 17 years in school. You are more than capable of tying your shoes, and you can definitely start a business. Starting a company when you're young has a lot of benefits. You aren't used to a cushy full-time salary to tempt you with a giant mortgage or an expensive car loan. You have a lifestyle that's nimble and flexible. When you're an entrepreneur launching a company, you are constantly thinking about how you can make your money stretch. Don't you think that if you're going to take a big risk, the best time to do it is when you have the least amount to lose? When you're in college, you hustle to make things work. You're cramming for multiple exams. You're scrambling to meet with your classmates on those dreaded group projects. And you're balancing all of your schoolwork deadlines along with the other commitments that you've made to your job and your friends and your family. When you're an entrepreneur launching a company, you hustle to get your business off the ground by exploring every opportunity that comes your way. You work on your business even when you don't have any clients to do work for, any products to sell, or phone calls to answer. Right after I graduated college, I started my own company, a design firm focused on helping doctors with their websites. I guarantee you, your doctor's website is horrible. Rich doctors with bad websites, my business was going to be a gold mine. Every day, I cold called doctors' offices. And every day, I was hung up on, rejected, and spent hundreds of dollars sending out brochures that I'm sure went straight into the trash at a time when I didn't have $100 to spare. I never wanted anyone to question whether a young 22-year-old put my portfolio together. So I did my best to be creative and make a great first impression. At the time, I didn't have enough money to have brochures professionally printed. So I would sit hunched over my desk with an X-Acto knife and a glue stick, cutting and pasting color printouts together to make my brochures. Whenever I didn't have any work to do for my clients in the beginning, which was often, I would make up design projects for fake clients so that I could build my portfolio. My office was just me and my desk, my computer, and my phone, and a bunch of wild guesses. One time, I had this great idea. I was going to mail my prospective client list customized fortune cookies. In every Chinese food box I mailed, I included a fortune for a giant discount off their website. I thought my idea was so creative and clever. So I mailed 200 doctors stale fortune cookies. I didn't get a single doctor to call me back. I kept turning over every heavy stone that came my way. Fortune cookies weren't working, so I went back to cold calling. It was miserable. I know that I sounded like a teenager on the phone with a soft, high voice, and I had no sales experience at all. But I knew that every office that I was calling had a terrible website or no website at all, so I kept doing it. I reminded myself that everything you do counts. I wasn't gaining any traction with these doctors, but a funny thing happened along the way. As I started turning over all of these stones, other opportunities started popping up. Businesses outside the medical community started asking me about their websites. So, being a 22-year-old perfectly capable of tying my own shoes, I decided to pivot my business, and I took on these other clients. 3 years later, by the time I was 25, I had convinced over 130 companies to trust me with their website. Even though I gained traction in the first 3 years, it took a lot to shake the perception that I was some young woman with a hobby. I was so nervous to introduce myself as a business owner to other people. I didn't feel like I deserved to be colleagues with other business owners that had established companies with actual employees. Going to my first networking event, I remember wiping my sweaty hands on my pants so that if anyone shook my hand, they wouldn't know how nervous I was. I wore the most adult-looking outfit that I had in my closet, the one blazer that I owned off the clearance rack of Marshall's, and another pair of tan trousers, also on clearance. I had business cards in my pocket and extra of my hand-cut brochures in my purse in case anyone asked for one. As I scanned the room full of people in business suits, I told myself, I'm 26. I'm 26. I'm 26. I was actually 22. But to me, 26 just seemed like such a more reasonable age to start a company than 22. So I gave myself a pep talk to act older and more confident than I actually was. I spotted a friendly-looking man by himself, and I get the courage to walk up to him. I stick out my hand, and I smile, and I say, "Hi, I'm Becky. Nice to meet you." And he smiles back and says, "Hi, Becky. I'm Bob. Are you with the high school students visiting today?" I was so crushed. I was not even close to passing as a business owner. So instead of turning red and running out the door and pretending like this whole thing never happened, I took a deep breath and said, "Well, actually, I own my own company, and I help people with their websites. What do you do?" And Bob and I went on to exchange business cards, and later on that day, I met more people. And of course, I was sure to casually mention, "Oh, have you heard the high schoolers are here today?" Even though it took so much courage for me to introduce myself to people older than I was that I didn't know, I kept going back to these networking events. Eventually, I started to like it. And after a few more events, I started to meet new clients from it. And then it wasn't scary anymore. Sometimes, starting out, a big part of gaining traction is just having the courage to keep showing up. When you're in college, you don't have a lot of expectations about what things are supposed to be like in the real world. So you can just make them up. When I first started iBec, I remember working with my first clients and how surprised and thankful they were that I returned their calls and emails so quickly. Of course, I didn't have anything else to do at the time, so I was really good at returning their phone calls and emails. But prompt communication was so important to me, and today it's become a differentiator in my business. When I needed to buy furniture for my first office space, I barely had a budget. So instead of getting a loan for some really nice, impressive office furniture, I went to the Salvation Army to see what deals I could find. I ended up with some cool vintage tables and yard sale treasures. Lucky enough, it turned out that open transitional workspaces are actually in vogue. My eclectic furniture gave my office personality that my clients loved and attracted employees that have cubicle phobia. Lots of people assume that I hired all my friends. I didn't, but what's cool is that owning my own company, I get to pick the people that I work with every day. So I choose to hire others who are kind, hardworking, and care about doing something awesome that makes a difference. When you're in college, there are so many possibilities of where you can take your career, and you're surrounded by people that believe that you can do anything. It's fun to set goals that may seem like a stretch. Right after I started iBec, I was at the grocery store, and I was in line looking at the magazine rack, and I saw Business Week's annual edition of the top 25 entrepreneurs, 25 and under in the country. I said to myself, I'm going to be in that magazine someday. Years passed, and I thought about it on and off, and then when I was 24, I realized, this is it. This is the last year I can be in Business Week. So I took my dream into my own hands, and I hired a PR firm to help make sure that Business Week knew my story. And it worked. In 2009, I was featured as a top 25 entrepreneur in the country. It was amazing. The day that the magazine came out, the article went on the homepage of Yahoo. We had 350 emails from people that wanted to build a website with my company, and they didn't care that I was young. Thank you. As you grow up, you realize that everyone is just as confused and insecure as you are. So don't be intimidated because you're young. Push yourself to do the things that you don't want to do. Force yourself to go into those uncomfortable situations and put your big kid pants on, even if you got them on clearance. Eventually, it gets easier. I promise. No matter what age you are, new things are scary. But they stop being scary if you take the first step. So don't wait to be a certain age to do what you want to do. Thank you.